My name is Amy Dorrit. People call me Little Dorrit because I am small and quiet. I was born in a strange and sad place called the Marshalsea prison in London. My father was there because he could not pay his debts. I was born behind high walls and iron gates, but I never blamed him. I loved him with all my heart. When I was a child, I thought the Marshalsea was the whole world. I saw men walking in and out, some crying, some shouting, some laughing too loudly to hide their pain. Every morning, the big gate opened and people came in to visit their family. Some brought food, some brought hope. I only had my mother's picture because she died when I was very small. Father said she was gentle and beautiful. I like to think she was watching over us. My father, Mr. Dorrit, was called the father of the Marshalsea. He had been there for many years. Everyone respected him. He wore clean clothes and spoke softly, as if he was still a rich man. People came to him for advice. He tried to live with dignity, even when we had little to eat. I was proud of him. But sometimes, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him sigh. He would whisper, "One day we will be free, Amy." Day. When I was old enough, I went out of the prison every morning to work. The rules allowed me to leave during the day because I was young and helped support my family. I worked as a seamstress, sewing clothes for rich ladies. They liked my work, though they never knew where I went home at night. I never told them I lived in a prison. I was afraid they would stop giving me work. Every penny I earned I gave to my father. He thanked me kindly and said, "You are my comfort, Amy." That made me happy. I had a brother named Tip. He was older than me, but he was careless. He did not like to work. He spent money quickly and often got into trouble. I tried to help him, but he laughed and said, "Don't worry, Little Dorrit. Something good will happen soon." I wished he would be more careful, for Father's sake. My sister Fanny was very different. She was proud and beautiful. She danced at a theater and dreamed of a better life. Sometimes she came to visit us, dressed in fine clothes, with perfume in her hair. She said she did not like people to know we came from the Marshalsea. Her words hurt me, but I understood. Not everyone can carry shame with peace. My life was simple. I worked, I cooked, I washed, and I took care of Father. In the evenings, I sat beside him in his small room. He talked about the days when he was free, when we lived in a big house with servants and light and laughter. He told stories about my mother and about music and gardens. I loved listening to him, but sometimes, when he spoke too long, his voice trembled. I knew he was remembering everything he had lost. One day, something unusual happened. A new man came to the Marshalsea to see the governor. He was tall, with kind eyes and quiet manners. His name was Arthur Clenham. He had just returned to England after many years abroad. I noticed that he looked sad, as if life had not been kind to him. After his meeting, he walked through the prison yard and saw me helping my father. He stopped for a moment and asked, "Do you live here?" I said softly, "Yes, sir." My name is Amy Dorrit." He looked surprised. "So young?" he said. "You live here with your father?" I nodded. "Yes, sir. My father has been here for many years." Something in his face changed. It was not pity, but deep feeling. He said, "You take good care of him. I can see that." I smiled a little and said, "I do my best." After that day, Mr. Clennam visited often. He spoke kindly to my father and asked many questions about his case. He wanted to know why my father had been in prison for so long. He said he would try to help. My father liked him and said, "He is a gentleman, Amy. A true one." I did not know why Mr. Clennam was so interested in us, but I soon learned that he had his own sadness. His mother, Mrs. Clennam, was a cold and strict woman. She lived in a dark house and believed in punishment more than love. Mr. Clennam did not agree with her, but he respected her. He once told me quietly, "My mother keeps secrets. I wish to know the truth about my family." I listened, not understanding everything, but I saw how heavy his heart was. Weeks passed, and my life went on the same. Every morning, I went out to work. Every evening, I returned to the Marshalsea. Some days were cold and hungry, but I never lost hope. I often looked at the sky from the small prison yard and whispered, "There must be kindness somewhere." Then one day, a letter came for me. It was from a woman named Mrs. Clennam. She wanted to see me. I was frightened, but I went. Her house was dark and silent. She sat in a big chair, her face pale and hard. She looked at me sharply and said, "You are Amy Dorrit?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She asked me strange questions about my father, about my birth, and about a gold watch my father once owned. I did not understand why. Her voice was cold, but her eyes were full of something I could not name. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. I left her house feeling confused. When I told Arthur about it, he looked thoughtful. "I think there is a secret here," he said. "Something about your family and mine." I did not ask more. I did not want to hope for things that might never be true. Life in the Marshalsea continued. Some people came. Some went. Some died there. But Father still believed that fortune would change. "One day," he said, "our luck will return. We will be free again." I smiled and said, "Yes, Father." But deep in my heart, I did not think it would ever happen. Still, I worked hard, and I prayed quietly every night. I asked God to keep Father well, to give Tip some wisdom, and to keep Fanny safe in her proud world. I also thought about Mr. Clennam. He often visited and brought small gifts for Father: fruit, books, warm clothes. He always spoke to me gently. I was shy, but I liked his company. He never looked down on us. He treated us like real people, not prisoners. Sometimes, when I walked home in the foggy London evening, I thought about his words, his eyes, his kindness. I did not understand it fully then, but something warm began to grow inside me. Something like trust, and maybe something more. But change was coming, though I did not know it yet. A man named Mr. Myrtle was becoming famous in London. People said he could make anyone rich. Many believed in him, even people from the prison. Father talked about him too. He said, "Perhaps Mr. Myrtle could help us one day." I did not know why, but his words made me uneasy. I had seen too much hope turn to sorrow. And one winter night, as the bells of St. George's Church rang in the cold air, I felt something shift, like the beginning of a story I could not yet see. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. After that winter night, life in the Marshalsea seemed the same on the surface, but something inside me began to change. I felt the air grow heavy with secrets. My father spoke often of freedom, as if he believed it was already close. He began to act proud again, like a man waiting for his lost honor to return. I wanted to believe him, but deep inside I was afraid that his dreams would break again. Arthur Clennam continued to visit. Every time he came, he brought light into the gray walls of the prison. He spoke kindly to Father and treated him with respect, which few people ever did. I always sat quietly and listened. I liked his calm voice. It gave me peace. He often asked me about my childhood, about my mother, and about Father's debts. I told him what little I knew. He looked serious, almost guilty, as if my words touched something in his heart. One afternoon, as I was leaving the prison to go to my sewing work, Arthur met me outside. He said softly, "Miss Dorrit, may I walk with you for a while?" I agreed. We walked through the narrow London streets, past the noise of carriages and market cries. The air smelled of coal and rain. Arthur said, "I have spoken again with my mother. There is something she hides. Something about your father and a debt that may not be his alone." I stopped walking and looked at him. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "I do not yet know, but I will find out." I thanked him. "You are very kind, Mr. Clennam. No one else has ever tried to help us." He smiled sadly. "Perhaps I am trying to make peace with my own past," he said. "But whatever the reason, you can trust me." After that day, I thought about his words often. They stayed in my mind like a small candle in a dark room. Weeks passed, and then something unexpected happened. A man came to the Marshalsea with important papers. He asked to see my father. I was in the room when he entered. He bowed politely and said, "Mr. Dorrit, I bring you good news. Your debts have been cleared. You are a free man." For a moment, my father did not move. He just stared at the man as if he had not heard right. Then he stood up slowly. "Free?" he whispered. "You mean I can leave?" The man nodded. "Yes, sir. You are free to go." Tears filled my eyes. Father pressed his hand to his chest and said, "God bless you, sir." I ran to him and held his hands. "Oh, Father, we are free," I cried. For the first time in my life, I felt the walls of the Marshalsea fall away. The air outside seemed wider, brighter. I could not believe it. Arthur Clennam came soon after. He smiled when he saw us. "I knew there was some mistake," he said. "The truth is, an old debt that once trapped your family has been repaid through an inheritance you never knew you had." Father was too happy to ask questions. He just kept saying, "Free, at last." We left the Marshalsea that afternoon. I looked back once at the tall gates, the only home I had ever known. It felt strange to leave it behind. I felt joy, but also fear. What would life be like outside? The world seemed too big for someone who had only known walls. Father decided that we must live as gentle people again. He said we must forget the past. No one must know we were ever in prison, he told me. He wore fine clothes and spoke like a rich man again. He began to dream of grand houses and important friends. I tried to be happy for him, but sometimes I missed the small room where we had once sat together in peace. Money changes people, I thought. Sometimes it hides their hearts. We moved to Italy, to a beautiful city with sunlight and music. Father said the air there was better for his health. Fanny was happy. She danced again in bright theaters. Tip was careless as always, spending money as if it would never end. I continued to sew, though I did not need to anymore. It made me calm. Arthur Clennam wrote to us sometimes. His letters were always kind and full of concern. When he came to Italy, he looked tired and older, but still gentle. I was glad to see him again. We often talked during quiet evenings on the balcony while Father entertained guests inside. Arthur told me that his mother was very ill. He said, "There are things I still do not understand about my family, but I think your story and mine are joined somehow." I listened quietly. The sound of the city at night filled the air. Laughter, music, the bells of distant churches. I said softly, "Perhaps the truth will come to you when the time is right." He looked at me with kind eyes and said, "You always give hope, Miss Dorrit, even when life gives none." My heart felt warm, but I looked away. I was too shy to speak. Months passed, and our new life grew heavier, not lighter. Father became proud and nervous. He wanted everyone to see him as a rich gentleman. He told people about his new fortune, but he never spoke of his years in the prison. Sometimes I saw him alone, looking at old papers, his hands shaking. I worried for him. Money had not made him free inside. It only built a different kind of wall around him. Then came bad news. Mr. Myrtle, the famous man everyone trusted, the man who made so many rich, was gone. His business had fallen apart. He had lost everything. And with him, many others lost all their money too. The news spread across Europe like fire. People cried, shouted, and fainted in the streets. Our family's money was also gone. Father could not believe it. He shouted, "It cannot be true. We are respectable people." But it was true. We were poor again. I tried to comfort him, but he would not listen. His pride broke him. His health became worse. I cared for him day and night, just as I had done in the Marshalsea. I was not afraid of poverty, but I was afraid of losing him. Arthur came to help, but soon after, he too lost everything. He had trusted Mr. Myrtle as well. He looked tired and ill. "I have no right to see you now, Miss Dorrit," he said softly. "I am ruined." I shook my head and said, "You are still the same kind man. That is what matters." He smiled faintly. "You are the only person who would say that." Time passed slowly. My father grew weaker. One night he called me to his side. "Amy," he whispered, "forgive me. I was proud and blind. I forgot what really matters." I took his hand and said, "You do not need to ask. I have always loved you." He smiled faintly and closed his eyes. That was the last night I saw him alive. After Father's death, I felt lost. I had no home, no family near me, and no money. Fanny stayed with her husband, and Tip went to look for work. I returned to London with a small bag and nothing else. It was strange to walk through the city again, where I had once worked as a poor seamstress. But this time, I was not afraid. I had known worse. One evening, I walked past the Marshalsea. The gates were still there, quiet in the evening light. I stopped and looked through the bars. I thought of my father, of my childhood, of all the days I had spent inside those walls. I whispered, "Goodbye." Then I turned away. I did not know then that Arthur Clennam was back in the same prison, not as a visitor, but as a debtor himself. When I heard about it, I felt my heart stop. He had helped everyone else, and now he was suffering alone. I decided to go to him. I took the few coins I had and walked to the prison gate. The guard looked surprised to see a small, simple woman asking to go in. "You want to visit a prisoner?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "His name is Arthur Clennam." Inside, the Marshalsea looked just the same. Gray walls, narrow windows, tired faces. But this time, I was not a child. I was not afraid. I walked through the hall until I saw him. He was sitting at a small table, his face pale and thin, his hands resting on an old book. When he saw me, he stood up quickly. "Amy," he said in shock. "Why are you here?" I smiled softly. "I came to see you. You once helped me when no one else did. Let me help you now." Arthur looked away. "I cannot let you do that," he said quietly. "I have nothing." I took his hand. "Neither did I, once. But you still came for me. Let me stay." He did not speak for a long time. Then he whispered, "You are an angel, Amy." I felt tears in my eyes. "No," I said, "just someone who remembers kindness." And so, once again, I found myself within the walls of the Marshalsea. But this time, I was not sad. I was where I was meant to be. The Marshalsea was quiet that evening. The same old walls, the same narrow yard, the same sad sounds of people waiting for freedom. But for me, it no longer felt like a place of pain. I was there by choice, to help someone I cared for. Life had come in a circle. I was not the poor girl born in prison anymore. I was someone who had lived, loved, and learned what truly mattered. Arthur Clennam sat in the small room that once belonged to another debtor. The light from the window touched his tired face. When I came in with a basket of food, he tried to smile. "You shouldn't be here every day," he said. "It's not right for you." I put the basket on the table. "It is right for me," I said softly. "I have nowhere else to go. Let me stay until you are free." He looked at me, his eyes full of sadness. "You have lost everything because of people like me." I shook my head. "No, Mr. Clennam. I lost nothing that mattered. I still have kindness. I still have you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was full of understanding. We both had been broken by the world, but somehow, standing in that quiet room, we felt whole again. The next few weeks passed slowly. I visited every day. I brought food and clean clothes. Sometimes I read to him from an old book. Other times, we just talked about simple things. The sound of the river outside, the smell of the evening rain, the memories of our past lives. He often said, "You are my comfort, Amy." Those words reminded me of my father, and they filled my heart with warmth and sadness at once. One evening, as the sun went down, the gatekeeper came with a letter. "For Mr. Clennam," he said. Arthur opened it slowly. His hands shook a little. When he finished reading, his face changed. He looked at me in surprise. "Amy," he said, "we are free." I stared at him. "Free?" I whispered. He nodded, still in disbelief. "A friend, someone I once helped, has repaid my debts. I am free to go." I did not speak at first. My heart felt too full. Then I said quietly, "Thank God." Arthur smiled weakly. "You prayed for me, didn't you?" I looked down. "Every night," I said. That evening, as we walked out of the Marshalsea together, I looked up at the sky. It was full of soft clouds and pale light. I thought about the first time I had seen those same gates as a child. Then they had felt heavy and endless. Now they seemed small and far behind me. We were free. Not rich, not powerful, but free in the way that mattered most. Arthur and I rented a small room near the river. It was clean but simple. one window, one table, and a small bed. I made it warm with flowers and a bit of cloth. He tried to work again, but his health was weak. I told him not to worry. "We can live quietly," I said. "We don't need more." He smiled. "You are stronger than you look, Amy," I answered softly. Maybe I had to be. One afternoon, as I sat sewing by the window, Arthur spoke suddenly. "Amy," he said, "there is something I must tell you before it's too late." I looked at him with worry, but he smiled gently. "Don't be afraid. It's not bad." He continued, "You remember my mother. She kept many secrets. Before she died, she confessed something. Long ago, she wronged your father's family. A debt that should have been forgiven was left unpaid. It was her mistake that kept your father in prison all those years. When I found out, I tried to make it right, but I learned too late." I felt tears in my eyes. "You could not know," I said softly. "You did all you could." He shook his head. "Still, I wanted you to know. Your kindness has repaid a wrong that was never yours to bear." I took his hand and said, "Let us leave the past where it belongs. My father is at peace now. So must we be." Arthur looked at me with deep feeling. "You are better than anyone I have ever known," he said. I smiled through my tears. No, just someone who has known pain and still believes in good. The months passed quietly. We lived simply, with small joys. The sound of birds in the morning, the smell of bread from the street below, the soft evenings by the fire. Arthur's health slowly grew stronger. Sometimes we walked by the river, where children played and boats floated by. He often stopped to watch them and said, "I never thought life could be so peaceful." I answered, "Peace is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers." One morning, Arthur asked me to sit beside him. He looked serious but calm. "Amy," he said, "I have no fine house, no money, no name to offer you. But I have my heart. Will you share your life with me?" For a moment I could not breathe. I had loved him quietly for so long, never hoping for more than friendship. My voice shook as I answered, "Yes, Arthur, I will." He took my hands and said softly, "Then my life begins again." I smiled through tears. "And mine too." We were married quietly in a small church by the river. Only a few friends were there. No rich clothes, no music, no crowd. Just peace. I wore a simple dress I had sewn myself. When Arthur placed the ring on my finger, I felt no sadness, no fear, only gratitude. After the wedding, we went for a walk. The city was full of light. The bells rang in the distance. We walked hand in hand, like two people who had known darkness and now walked into morning. As the days turned to years, our life remained humble. We never became rich, but we never needed to. Arthur worked in a small office, and I continued sewing. Sometimes we helped others who were poor or in debt, remembering what it felt like to be forgotten. People said we were too quiet, but I think peace has its own voice, a gentle one. Sometimes, when the evening sun touched the water, I thought about my father, about the prison, about the girl I once was, small, shy, and full of hope in a world that often had none. I whispered a small prayer. Thank you for every sorrow, for it led me here. Arthur would smile and ask, "What are you thinking about, Amy?" And I always said, about how strange life is. It can begin in a prison, but end in love. He would take my hand and say softly, "And that is all that matters." Ta. My name is Ella. I am 24 years old. I live in a small town with my parents and 4 sisters. Our house is full of noise and laughter. My mother always talks about marriage. She dreams of rich husbands for all her daughters. My father is quiet and kind. He likes to read books in his study. I am the second daughter. My older sister, Grace, is calm and sweet. Everyone loves her. I am more direct. I speak my mind. Sometimes people think I am proud, but I just say what I feel. One morning, my mother ran into the living room with excitement. "Girls, listen! A new man has moved into the big house near the park. His name is Mr. Ben Lawson. He is young and rich." She smiled wide. "He must be looking for a wife." My sisters laughed, but we were all curious. A week later, there was a charity event in town. Mr. Lawson was there, dressed neatly in a blue suit. He looked friendly and smiled at everyone. He talked to many people, including my sister Grace. They seemed to get along very well. Mr. Lawson came with his friend, Mr. Daniel Reed. Daniel was taller, quiet, and serious. He looked like he didn't want to be there. People said he was from the city and very rich, but he didn't talk to anyone. When I looked at him, I thought he seemed proud. Later that evening, I overheard him speaking to Ben. He said quietly, "Your new town is small. There is no one interesting here." I felt angry when I heard that. I thought, how rude! He thinks he is better than us. After that night, I didn't like Daniel. I told my best friend Mia, "He may have money, but he has no manners." She laughed and said, "Maybe he is just shy." But I didn't believe her. Grace and Ben started seeing each other more often. He visited our house and brought flowers. My mother was very happy. She told everyone, "Grace will soon be engaged." I was happy for my sister, but I didn't like seeing Daniel with them. He was polite but distant. Whenever he spoke to me, his words were short. He made me feel like he was judging me. One day, Ben invited us to a small dinner at his home. It was a nice evening. Everyone laughed and talked. Daniel sat across from me. I tried to ignore him, but during dinner, he asked me questions about my job. I work as an English teacher at a small school. He asked if I liked it. I said, "Yes, I love my job." He looked surprised. "It must be difficult to teach small children," he said. "It is," I replied, "but it is also beautiful." His eyes softened for a moment, but then he turned away. I thought he was strange, sometimes kind, sometimes cold. After dinner, there was music. Grace and Ben danced together. Daniel stood near the window watching. I was standing nearby when he spoke softly. "You don't like dancing?" I said. "I do, but only with someone I like." He smiled slightly. "Then I hope you find someone you like soon." His tone was teasing, but I thought he was making fun of me. I felt my face grow hot. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," I said sharply. "I don't need your advice." Then I walked away. I didn't see the small smile that formed on his face as I left. The next few weeks were full of small-town gossip. Everyone talked about Grace and Ben. But one morning, Ben suddenly left town. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. Grace was heartbroken. My mother cried, "What happened? Why did he leave?" I was angry and confused. Then we heard that Daniel had advised Ben to end the relationship. Grace said softly, "He told Ben I wasn't good enough." I couldn't believe it. My dislike for Daniel turned to hate. I thought he was cruel and proud. A few days later, my friend Mia invited me to the city for a short holiday. I was happy to go. I wanted to forget everything. When we arrived, she introduced me to her cousin George. He was kind, easy to talk to, and very friendly. We started meeting often. He told me that he once worked with Daniel Reed. I was surprised. I asked, "You know him?" George nodded. "Yes, but he is not a good man," he said. "He cheated my friend in business." I was shocked. That made me hate Daniel even more. I told Mia everything, and she said, "He doesn't sound like someone who deserves your time." When I returned home, Grace was still sad, but she tried to smile again. My mother didn't stop talking about finding us husbands. She said, "Ella, maybe one day you will meet someone rich and kind." I laughed. "I want someone kind first, rich later." But deep inside, I was still angry about Daniel and how he hurt my sister. One afternoon, while I was out for a walk, I saw a familiar car stop near the park. Daniel stepped out. I froze. He looked surprised too. "Miss Ella," he said quietly. "It's been some time." I didn't want to talk to him. "Yes," I replied coldly. "I'm surprised you came back." He sighed. "I came to see Ben. He regrets how things ended." I crossed my arms. "He hurt my sister." Daniel looked serious. "I didn't mean to cause pain." His voice was calm, almost soft. "I thought I was protecting him." I frowned. "From what? From love?" He looked at me for a moment, then said, "From a family who only wanted his money." His words cut me deeply. "You are wrong," I said firmly. "My sister loved him for who he was, not what he had." Daniel's face showed regret, but I didn't care. I turned and walked away. My heart was racing. I was angry, but I also felt something strange, something I didn't understand yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Daniel's face, his quiet voice, and the sadness in his eyes. Why did he look so sorry? Why did his words feel different this time? I didn't want to care, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. I told myself it meant nothing. Still, When I closed my eyes, I saw his face again. It was the beginning of something I didn't expect, something that would change everything I thought I knew about pride, about love, and about him. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. A few weeks passed, but I couldn't forget that meeting in the park. Daniel's calm voice and the sadness in his eyes stayed with me. I tried to push it out of my mind. I told myself he didn't matter. But deep inside, I felt confused. Could I have been wrong about him? I didn't want to believe it. I told my sister Grace about seeing him. She listened quietly and then said, "Maybe he feels bad, Ella. People can change." I didn't answer. I didn't want to talk about him anymore. A few days later, a big surprise came. My aunt invited me to visit her in the city for 2 weeks. I was excited. I needed a change. When I arrived, her home was full of light and laughter. She loved to talk, and her husband was always joking. One evening, we went to a charity event at a hotel. There were many guests, businessmen, teachers, and families. As I stood near the buffet table, I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned, and there he was, Daniel Reed. He looked different, not cold, not distant, just tired, maybe even shy. He walked toward me and smiled. "Miss Ella," he said softly, "I didn't expect to see you here." I took a deep breath and replied, "Neither did I." He looked around the room. "May I offer you some coffee?" he asked. For a moment I wanted to say no, but something in his voice was gentle. So I said, "All right." We sat at a small table. It was strange at first. I didn't know what to say. Daniel broke the silence. "I know you think badly of me," he said slowly. "You have every reason to. But there are things you don't know." His words caught my attention. "What things?" I asked carefully. He sighed. "When Ben met your sister, I didn't understand her well. I thought she didn't love him. I thought she was only being kind because he was rich. I was wrong. I see that now." I didn't expect that. "You were wrong," I repeated. He nodded. "Yes. I thought I was protecting my friend, but I hurt your family instead." His eyes met mine. "I'm sorry." For a moment, I didn't know how to speak. I had hated him for so long, and now he said sorry so simply. I said, "My sister was very sad, but she's strong. She's better now." Daniel gave a small smile. "I'm glad to hear that." We talked for a long time. The conversation was calm and easy. He asked about my school, my students, and my dreams. He listened with interest. It was not the same man I met before. When we said goodbye, he asked if he could see me again. I said, "Maybe." That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't anger. It was curiosity. Why did he seem so honest now? Why did I feel so peaceful when he listened to me? I told myself it was nothing, but my heart didn't believe that. The next morning, he sent a message. It said, "Would you like to visit the art gallery today? There's an exhibition you might enjoy." I smiled. I didn't know he liked art. I said yes. When I met him at the gallery, he looked simple and relaxed, not like the proud businessman from before. We walked together, looking at the paintings. One picture caught my eye. A woman standing alone in a storm. "She looks strong," I said. Daniel replied, "Like you." I felt my cheeks grow warm. I didn't know what to say. After the visit, we sat outside for coffee. Daniel told me about his family, his work, and his life in the city. He said, "I have money, yes, but sometimes it feels empty. I wanted people to respect me. I didn't realize that respect without kindness means nothing." I listened quietly. For the first time, I saw him as human, not just rich and proud. "Maybe you were lonely," I said softly. He looked at me and nodded. "Maybe I was." We met a few more times that week. Each time, our talks became easier. I started to enjoy his company. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind and thoughtful. One evening, it began to rain. We stood under a small shop roof waiting for a taxi. Daniel looked at me, his hair wet, his face calm. "Ella," he said gently, "I know I was wrong before. I judged you and your family. I was foolish. But since meeting you again, I've come to respect you deeply. You are honest, strong, and kind. I don't know when it happened, but I've fallen in love with you." My heart stopped. I didn't expect those words. I didn't know what to say. For a moment, all I could hear was the sound of rain. I looked at him, trying to read his face. He looked serious, not proud, not joking, just sincere. But I still remembered my pain. "You hurt my sister," I said quietly. "You hurt me too." He nodded. "I know, and I'm ready to accept that. I only ask for a chance to prove myself." I felt confused. I had hated him for months. Now, he was standing in front of me, saying he loved me. I didn't trust my feelings. "I need time," I said finally. He nodded again. "Take all the time you need." Then he smiled sadly and stepped into the rain to find a taxi. I watched him go, my heart full of questions. The next few days, I thought about him often. I remembered how he used to be proud and cold, but now he was gentle. I remembered his apology and his quiet kindness. I wanted to tell someone, but I couldn't. Even Grace didn't know. I didn't want her to think I had forgotten what he did. Then one morning, something unexpected happened. Ben came back to town. He came straight to our house. Grace was shocked to see him. My mother almost screamed with joy. Ben said he had made a mistake leaving her. He explained that Daniel had told him the truth about his own pride and that he was sorry for what he had done. "He made me see how wrong I was," Ben said. "He's a good man, Ella. You should know that." Those words surprised me. Daniel had helped Ben make things right. Maybe he really had changed. Grace forgave Ben, and soon they were together again. Everyone in the house was happy. Everyone except me. I was happy for Grace, but I couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. I wanted to see him, but I didn't know how. A week later, I received a message from him. It said, "I'm glad your sister and Ben are together again. They deserve happiness. Take care, Ella." There was no request to meet, no extra words, just that. It made my heart ache. I realized I wanted to see him again, not just to thank him, but because I missed him. That evening, I went for a walk near the park where we first met. The air was cool, and the sunset painted the sky pink. I didn't expect to see him there, but as I turned the corner, there he was. He looked surprised too.
"Ella,"
he said softly.
"I didn't think you'd come here."
I smiled shyly. "I didn't think you'd be here either." For a moment, we just stood there. Then I said, "Thank you for helping Ben and Grace. You didn't have to, but you did." He smiled a little.
"I wanted to make things right."
I looked at him carefully. "You did. And you were right about one thing." He looked confused.
"What's that?"
I took a deep breath. Sometimes pride stops us from seeing the truth. His eyes softened.
"Does that mean you forgive me?"
I smiled. "Maybe I already have." He looked at me for a long time, and then he said,
"That's enough for me."
The wind blew softly between us. We walked together slowly, talking about simple things, our families, our dreams, our mistakes. Everything felt different now. It wasn't pride anymore. It wasn't hate. It was something warm, quiet, and real. After that evening in the park, Daniel and I started to meet more often. We didn't plan it, but somehow we always crossed paths. Sometimes it was at the coffee shop near my school, sometimes at the park in the evening. He never pushed me to talk about what had happened between us. He just smiled and asked about my day. It was simple, but it felt peaceful. I liked being around him. He listened to me in a way no one else did. When I talked about my students or my family, he listened carefully. One afternoon, after I finished teaching, I saw his car waiting outside. He got out, holding 2 cups of coffee.
"You look tired,"
he said.
"I thought you might need this."
His voice was calm and warm. I took the cup and smiled. "Thank you," I said quietly. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot to me. That evening, we sat on a bench under the big oak tree near the school. The air smelled like rain. I looked at him and said, "You've changed a lot, Daniel." He smiled softly.
"Maybe I just stopped pretending. I used to think I had to be perfect to earn respect. But you taught me something different."
I raised an eyebrow.
"What did I teach you?"
He looked into my eyes and said,
"That real respect comes from kindness, not pride."
His words touched my heart. I didn't say anything for a while. Then I whispered, "I was wrong too." He looked surprised.
"About what?"
I smiled sadly. "About you. I judged you before I knew you." He shook his head.
"Maybe I deserved that."
We both laughed quietly, and for the first time, the silence between us felt gentle, not heavy. Days turned into weeks, and life felt calm again. Grace and Ben got engaged, and our house was full of laughter. My mother couldn't stop smiling. She said, "Ella, now it's your turn." I laughed, but inside, I thought of Daniel. I didn't know what we were yet. We weren't together, but something was growing between us, slowly, softly, like a flower after a long winter. One afternoon, my school held a charity event for children. I was helping organize it when I suddenly saw Daniel walk in with a big box of books and toys. "You came," I said, surprised. He smiled. "You said your students needed books, so here I am." The children were happy, running around him, thanking him. Seeing him with them made my heart feel full. He wasn't the proud man I once thought he was. He was kind, patient, and simple. After the event, as the sun began to set, I found him standing near the school gate. "Thank you for helping," I said. "You made the children so happy." He looked at me with a small smile. "I should be the one thanking you. You've changed how I see the world." I tilted my head, teasing. "Oh, really? How?" He smiled wider. "I used to believe that money and power were everything. Now I know that love, honesty, and kindness are worth more." My heart beat faster. There was something in his eyes that made me feel safe. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Then I said softly, "Maybe we both learned something." He nodded. "Maybe we did." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. The past didn't hurt me like before. I remembered the first time we met, how proud and cold he was. Now he was gentle and open. And I remembered how proud I was too, how quick I was to judge him. We had both changed. Maybe this was what love really meant. Learning to see someone with new eyes. A few days later, my family hosted a small dinner for Grace and Ben. Our house was full of flowers and laughter. My mother was busy giving orders to everyone. I was helping in the kitchen when I heard my father's voice. "Ella, there's someone here to see you." I wiped my hands and walked to the living room. Daniel was standing there, dressed neatly but simply, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. My mother almost dropped a plate. "Oh, Mr. Reed! What a surprise!" she said loudly. He smiled politely. "Good evening, Mrs. Bennet," he replied. My mother looked at me and winked before leaving the room. I wanted to hide, but I couldn't stop smiling. Daniel looked at me and said, "I came to see your sister and Ben, but I also wanted to talk to you." My heart raced. "To me?" I asked softly. He nodded. "Yes." He took a deep breath. "Ella, I know I made mistakes. I was proud, and I hurt you and your family. But every day since we met again, you've shown me what it means to be better. You've changed me in ways I can't explain. I don't want to lose you. I love you." For a moment, everything around me went quiet. I could hear my heartbeat. I looked at him, his face, his eyes, his voice. He wasn't the man I hated months ago. He was someone new, someone I trusted. I smiled, tears filling my eyes. "I think I love you too," I whispered. He stepped closer, his eyes shining with warmth. "You think?" he said playfully. I laughed softly. "No," I said,
looking up at him. I know. He laughed too, and for the first time, it felt like everything had come full circle. When my family saw us talking, my mother nearly cried with joy. Grace hugged me and whispered, "See? Some stories do have a happy ending." I laughed and said, "Yes, but not without a few lessons first." That night, after everyone had left, Daniel and I walked outside under the stars. The air was cool, and the world felt peaceful. He took my hand and said quietly, "Do you remember the first time we met?" I smiled. "How could I forget? I thought you were the proudest man in the world." He laughed. "And you were the proudest woman." I nodded. Maybe we were both right. We both laughed again, but then his voice grew soft. "I'm glad we were wrong in the end." I looked up at the stars and smiled. Me too. The wind moved gently through the trees. His hand was warm in mine. I knew that our love wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was born from mistakes, pride, and misunderstanding, but also from forgiveness and truth. As we stood there together, I thought about everything that had happened. Sometimes love doesn't come easy. Sometimes it hides behind pride. But when we learn to listen, when we choose kindness over judgment, love finds its way. That night, I realized something simple but powerful. Pride had brought us apart, but love had brought us back together. And for the first time, I understood what true love really meant. It wasn't about money or status. It wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about two hearts learning to forgive, to understand, and to grow together.